Your daughter's name was removed for review, Mr. Miller. Dr. Vanessa Crowley said it with a soft smile, but the words landed like a door locking. Ethan Miller froze beside the marble check-in table, one oil-stained hand resting on Lily's shoulder as his 10-year-old daughter clutched a white envelope to her chest. On its corner, a half-peeled sticker still read, Founders Day Voice Finalist, B17. Crowley reached for it. Let me hold that. Lily stepped back and whispered, Daddy, did I do something wrong? 3 hours earlier, the morning had started with the smell of motor oil and burnt coffee in Ethan's old Ford truck. The heater coughed twice before giving Lily any warmth, and the windshield carried a thin skin of Vermont frost that made the world outside look blurred and unfinished. Ethan wore his brown canvas jacket, the same one with a small tear near the cuff, and Lily sat beside him in her Navy school uniform, smoothing her skirt with both hands as if wrinkles could decide her future. On her lap was the envelope. She had written her letter in pencil first, then copied it slowly in blue ink, making sure every word looked brave even when her hand shook. At the bottom corner, she had drawn his truck under rain clouds, and beside it, a small square of navy cloth. Ethan had noticed the drawing but had not asked much. Children held certain truths gently. Good fathers learned not to pry them open too soon. You nervous? He asked, turning past the stone pillars of Whitmore Academy. Lily nodded. A little. That means it matters. She looked at him then, her brown eyes serious beneath the loose strands of hair she had tried to pin back herself. What if they only picked me because they felt bad? Ethan slowed at the front drive, where polished SUVs lined the curb and parents stepped out in wool coats that looked more expensive than his rent. He glanced at the grand brick building, the iron gates, the banners that read belonging, excellence, tradition. Then he looked back at his daughter. Pity doesn't write a letter for you, Lil. You did that. She held the envelope tighter. A gust of cold air slipped in when he opened her door. Somewhere near the entrance, a string quartet was warming up, one violin note rising too sharp before settling. The sound made Lily flinch. Ethan saw it, but he did not mention the school assembly from October, the laughter over her second-hand shoes, or the way she had stopped singing in rooms full of children after that. He only knelt and tied her left shoelace again, even though it was not loose. One step, he said, then the next. Inside, the lobby smelled of lemon polish, fresh flowers, and money pretending not to have a cent. A volunteer scanned names from a tablet while a security camera blinked red above the check-in table. Lily gave her name. The woman smiled, searched, then frowned. She searched again. Ethan watched her thumb move too quickly, then stop. There may be a note, she said, lowering her voice. That was when Dr. Vanessa Crowley appeared in a cream blazer, calm as a judge, kind as a locked gate. She welcomed 2 donor families by name before turning to Ethan and Lily with a different smile, the kind people used when they wanted cruelty to look like concern. Mr. Miller, she said, let's not create confusion in the lobby. Lily's fingers tightened around the envelope, and the peeled finalist sticker caught the chandelier light. Across the hall, an elderly woman in a gray sweater paused near the founder's portrait. Eleanor Whitmore had been walking unnoticed, almost invisible among the polished crowd, until her silver-framed glasses caught the drawing on Lily's letter. The old Ford truck, the rain, and the navy handkerchief folded exactly the wrong way. Her hand moved slowly to her coat pocket. Crowley saw the movement. For one clean second, the principal's smile slipped. Then she reached toward the envelope again, faster this time, and Ethan quietly moved his body between her hand and his child. A child doesn't stop belonging, he said, voice low, because an adult moved her name. No one around them spoke. Not the receptionist. Not the parents pretending not to stare. Not Eleanor Whitmore, whose fingers had now closed around the real navy handkerchief inside her pocket. And in that thin, polished silence, Ethan saw the smallest thing on Lily's envelope. The sticker had not fallen off by accident. It had been peeled away by a careful adult hand. The torn edge of the sticker looked too clean for an accident. Ethan saw it as Dr. Crowley guided them away from the check-in table with one open palm, not touching his back, but steering him all the same, like a man whose presence needed managing. "This way, please." "Are we in trouble?" Lily whispered. "No," Ethan said, though the word had to travel through his chest before it became sound. The hallway off the lobby was narrower than the one shown on the school brochure. Its walls held framed photographs of smiling students in blazers, children shaking hands with senators, children holding science trophies, children with last names printed on brass plaques beneath glass. Lily walked beside him without swinging her arms. She held the white envelope flat against her uniform sweater, careful not to bend it more than it already was. Behind them, the ceremony music continued, soft and polished, but the sound grew thinner with every step, until only the click of Crowley's heels remained. At the end of the corridor, she opened a door marked Parent Reception and ushered them inside. The room smelled of lemon wax, coffee, and expensive perfume. A silver tray of pastries sat untouched on a sideboard, each one arranged with tweezers-like precision. 3 parents in tailored coats looked up, then looked away too slowly. One woman's gaze dropped to Ethan's work boots, where a thin line of dried mud clung to the sole. Another glanced at the dark oil stain along his thumb and tightened her hand around a porcelain cup. Crowley gave them all a professional smile. "Just a minor scholarship review," she said, as if announcing a weather delay. Lily heard the word minor and shrank closer to her father. Ethan noticed. He took off his brown canvas jacket and draped it over the back of a chair before easing Lily into it, making sure the metal edge of the seat did not catch her skirt. "Sit here, sweetheart." But the ceremony, one thing at a time. Crowley opened a blue folder on the small round table. The folder was thick, but too neat, as though someone had prepared it not to understand Lily Miller, but to contain her. On the front page, in bold letters, it read Student Fit Review. Beneath Lily's name were phrases Ethan had never heard spoken about a child with kindness behind them. Limited family enrichment, low social integration, emotional withdrawal during group performance. He read each line slowly, his jaw still, his eyes moving with the discipline of a man who knew anger could scare the wrong person. "Emotional withdrawal?" he asked. Crowley folded her hands. During the October assembly, Lily declined to participate in the choral presentation. Lily's face flushed. Her fingers found the corner of the envelope and rubbed the peeled sticker until the paper made a faint, nervous scratch. Ethan looked down at her. He remembered that afternoon. He remembered her shoes by the kitchen door, the cheap black ones with the repaired buckle. He remembered her sitting on the edge of the bed, saying her stomach hurt, though her stomach had not been the thing wounded. "She was laughed at," Ethan said quietly. Crowley's expression softened in a way that did not warm her eyes. "Children misread social moments, Mr. Miller. Part of our role is identifying whether a student is emotionally ready for this environment." She was 10. Exactly. The word landed gently, and somehow that made it worse. Outside the glass panel of the door, Eleanor Whitmore had stopped in the hallway. She did not enter. Not yet. Her silver-framed glasses rested low on her nose, and in the reflection of the glass, she could see Crowley's folder, Lily's bent shoulders, and Ethan's hand resting on the back of his daughter's chair without gripping it. Protective but not possessive. Hurt but not loud. Crowley slid a second page toward him. "The scholarship committee must consider the whole child. Academic strength is only one factor." Ethan looked at the page. The original letter was not there. In its place, a typed summary appeared under the heading Essay Theme. Father's hardship, emotionally manipulative, limited institutional alignment. For the first time, his breathing changed. Not much, just enough for Lily to look up. "Where's her letter?" he asked. Crowley paused one beat too long. The original letter was unnecessary for today's discussion. It was her own words. "And we have summarized the relevant themes." "You summarized my daughter into a warning label." One parent at the sideboard shifted, uncomfortable now, not because Ethan had raised his voice, but because he had not. The room felt colder. The air vent above them whispered steadily, moving the corner of Lily's envelope with a tiny lift and fall. The half-peeled B17 sticker caught again in the light, flashing once like a signal someone had tried to cover. Crowley reached for her pen. "Mr. Miller, I understand this is emotional. Families sometimes attach great hope to institutions like Whitmore. But hope cannot override fit." Ethan looked at the folder, then at his daughter, then back at Crowley. "You can judge my income," he said. "You don't get to rewrite my child's heart." Crowley's smile tightened, but only at the edges. "No one is judging your income." Across the room, a father in a navy overcoat lowered his phone too quickly, as if he had been recording or pretending not to. Lily saw it and looked at her shoes. Ethan saw that too. He reached into his pocket and found the little broken pencil Lily always carried, the yellow paint worn away near the tip. He placed it on the table beside her envelope, not as evidence, not yet, but as something familiar her hand could hold. "May I have a copy of the review?" he asked. Crowley blinked. "That won't be necessary. If it's fair, it can be written down." The hallway outside seemed to still. Eleanor's hand moved to her pocket again, touching the folded navy handkerchief hidden there. Through the glass, she watched Crowley pull the blue folder half an inch back toward herself. It was a small movement, almost nothing, but it was the first honest thing her body had done all morning. Then Crowley said, too quickly, "The original letter was removed before the finalist list was finalized." And Eleanor's eyes shifted to the torn sticker on Lily's envelope, because B17 had already been chosen before anyone in that room knew it belonged to a garage man's daughter. The words stayed behind the glass even after Crowley stopped speaking. Removed. Before the finalist list was finalized. Eleanor Whitmore did not move. She looked at the torn B17 sticker on Lily's envelope, then at Ethan Miller's hands, rough and nicked around the knuckles, the kind of hands schools like Whitmore praised in murals about American labor but rarely invited to sit at polished tables. Something in the order of events was wrong. 3 days earlier, before the scholarship folders, before the cream blazer, before Lily's name disappeared from a list someone hoped no one would question, rain had been falling hard enough to turn the curb outside Whitmore Academy into a silver stream. Ethan's old Ford truck rattled at the red light near the rear bus stop, its wipers dragging across the windshield with a tired rubber groan. The heater was barely winning against the cold. His phone lay in the cup holder with a cracked screen, glowing with one message from Lily's after-school teacher. "Lily is waiting in the library. No rush, just checking." Ethan read it twice because there was always a rush when you were the only parent. Rent was due Friday. The alternator belt in his truck had started whining that morning. In the glove box, folded behind an expired insurance card he had already renewed but not replaced, was an envelope with $43 cash marked groceries in Lily's careful handwriting. He had laughed when she wrote it, then almost cried later when he realized his 10-year-old had learned to label money by what they could not waste. He was reaching to shift into drive when he saw the sedan. It sat angled near the bus shelter, hazard lights blinking weakly through the rain. Beside it stood an older woman in a gray sweater under a thin coat, one hand on the hood, the other gripping the door frame like the world had tilted beneath her. Cars passed. One slowed, then kept going. A black SUV with a Whitmore parking decal swept by close enough to throw water against the sedan's tire, then turned through the employee gate without stopping. Ethan watched the woman lower her head against the rain. The light turned green. Behind him, someone honked. He exhaled through his nose, pulled across the lane, and parked behind her. No one clapped. No one filmed. No one important was supposed to see. That was what made it honest. He stepped into the rain and felt it run cold through the tear in his jacket cuff. "Ma'am," he called, keeping his hands visible so she would not be frightened. "You okay?" The woman looked up. Her silver-framed glasses were speckled with rain. She tried to smile, but her lips were pale. "I'm just waiting for roadside assistance. In this weather, you'll be waiting with pneumonia. I don't want to trouble you." "Too late," Ethan said, not unkindly. "I already stopped." The smallest breath of amusement crossed her face and vanished. He pulled the navy handkerchief from his back pocket, the one Lily teased him for folding like an old man, and held it over her head while guiding her toward the passenger side of his truck. "Sit in the heat a minute. I'll take a look. Your truck will get wet." It's a truck. The rain beat on the hood like thrown gravel. Ethan opened the sedan, leaned over the battery, and saw it almost immediately. Loose cable, green crust at the terminal. A clamp that had no business pretending it still had grip. Simple fix, but simple did not mean unimportant. He went back to his Ford, grabbed a small tool roll from beneath the seat, and wiped the terminal clean with an old shop rag. His fingers stung in the cold. The woman watched from the passenger seat, both hands wrapped around the weak stream of heat coming from the vent. On the dashboard above her knees, Lily's pencil drawing from last week fluttered where Ethan had tucked it under a cracked plastic clip. A house, a truck, 2 stick figures, and a yellow sun too big for the page. "Your daughter?" the woman asked when he returned to test the ignition. "Yes, ma'am. She draws you tall." Ethan glanced at the paper and gave a tired smile. "That's kindness, not accuracy." The sedan coughed once, then started. Its headlights brightened through the rain. The woman looked genuinely relieved, the kind of relief that came with embarrassment attached. "What do I owe you?" She reached for her purse. Ethan shook his head before the wallet even opened. "Nothing. Please. I can pay. It was a cable. And your time. My daughter's waiting," he said. "I hope someone would stop for her too." The woman looked at him then, not with pity, not quite with trust yet, but with the startled attention of someone hearing a language she thought had gone extinct. Ethan turned away before gratitude could become uncomfortable. From his glove box, he took his small service notebook, the brown one with water-warped corners, and wrote quickly under the date. EW Sedan, battery cable, no charge. He did not ask for her full name. She had given only initials when he asked what to write down. Then, noticing her wince when she stood, he pointed across the street to Bell's Pharmacy, its little brass doorbell flashing whenever customers came in. "You've got a headache? It's nothing. That's what people say when it's something." He bought aspirin, bottled water, and a cup of soup from the warmer near the register. $8.47, cash. The green paper bag crackled when he handed it to her, and the receipt, damp at one corner, he tucked behind his sun visor without thinking. Not because he wanted proof, because men who lived close to the edge kept receipts the way sailors watched clouds. The woman tried once more to return the navy handkerchief, but Ethan was already checking the street for traffic. "Keep it till the rain quits," he said. "I've got others." He did not. When he finally reached the Whitmore Library, Lily was sitting with her backpack on her knees, pretending not to be scared by being last. She looked at his wet sleeves, then at the empty space where the grocery money had been. "Did the truck break again?" she asked. Ethan smiled and held out the soup he had saved for her instead of himself. "Not ours." "Then whose?" He ruffled her hair, careful not to disturb the little clip she liked. "Someone who needed a hand." Lily took the soup with both hands and looked at him the way children look when they are still deciding what kind of world adults have built. "Were they nice?" Ethan thought of the woman's pale fingers around the heater vent, the folded handkerchief still in her possession, the initials in his notebook, and the black SUV that had passed without stopping. "She was cold," he said. That was enough. Later that night, while Ethan changed out of wet socks and counted what remained for groceries, Lily sat at the kitchen table with her letter draft and drew a small navy square beneath a truck in the rain. She did not know the initials in his service log mattered. Ethan did not know the woman had photographed the fading words on his tailgate. Miller Repairs, fair work, fair price. And none of them knew yet that the receipt under his sun visor, the handkerchief in a stranger's pocket, and the child's drawing on a scholarship letter had just become the first quiet witnesses against a lie. Back in the parent reception room, the rain from 3 days ago seemed to follow Ethan Miller into the present. It was not on the windows anymore. It was in the wavering edge of Lily's envelope, in the navy square drawn beneath the old Ford truck, in the way Dr. Vanessa Crowley looked at that little picture as if a child's memory had become an inconvenience. "Mr. Miller," she said, closing the blue folder halfway, "I think we need to be very careful here." "Careful with what?" Ethan asked. "With allowing emotion to become evidence." Lily's hand tightened around the broken pencil he had placed beside her. The room had grown still enough for the air vent to sound loud. Across the small table, the Student Fit Review sat beneath Crowley's palm, its language neat, cold, and cruel in the way polite documents could be. Outside the glass door, Eleanor Whitmore remained in the hallway, not hidden, not announced, just paused between one world and another. She had heard enough to know something was wrong, but wrong was not the same as proven. She had built Whitmore Academy long ago because poor children were so often asked to prove their worth twice. Now, standing beneath her own portrait, she had to be careful not to replace one unfairness with another. A moving letter did not automatically make a process corrupt. A kind-looking father did not automatically make a school guilty. And a child's pain, however real, still needed the dignity of truth. Crowley turned to Lily with a soft professional voice. "Sweetheart, did your father help you write this letter?" Lily looked at Ethan first. He did not nod. He did not answer for her. He simply lowered his chin a fraction, giving her permission to tell only what was hers. "He helped me spell academy," she whispered. "Anything else?" "He was asleep when I wrote most of it." One parent near the pastry tray gave a faint breath through the nose, not quite a laugh, but enough to make Lily's cheeks burn. Ethan looked toward the sound. Not angry, just seeing it. The woman quickly lifted her coffee cup. Crowley's pen clicked once. "Lily, some of these phrases are very mature. For example, you wrote that your father says kindness gets smaller when people brag about it. That sounds like something an adult might craft for effect." Ethan watched the pen. Clicked open, clicked shut, clicked open again. A person often did that when they wanted the room to move at their rhythm. He reached gently for the letter, but only after Lily slid it toward him. He did not pull it from her. He flattened the page with 2 fingers and turned it slightly toward the window, where the winter light fell across the paper. The V water stain near the bottom corner darkened. The blue ink feathered at the edge of one sentence. "She writes what she hears," he said. Crowley smiled without warmth. "That is precisely the concern." Eleanor's eyes moved to the stain. It was not decorative. It had warped the paper fibers, faint and uneven, the way rain did when it dried slowly in a warm kitchen. Crowley noticed Eleanor looking and shifted half a step, just enough to block the hallway view. Small, smooth, almost graceful. But Eleanor saw it. Ethan did too. He turned the letter back toward his daughter. "Lil," he said softly, "read the part you remember, not the pretty part. The real part." Lily swallowed. The paper trembled in her hands. "Daddy bought blue medicine in a paper bag from the store with the bell on the door." The room did not react at first. Then Crowley let out a careful sigh. Children often attach vivid details to stories, especially when they are under stress. Eleanor opened the door. The latch made a quiet metal sound, and every adult in the room turned as if a judge had entered, though Eleanor wore no robe, only a gray sweater damp at the hem and silver glasses low on her nose. Crowley straightened immediately. "Mrs. Whitmore, I didn't realize you were joining us for this review." "Neither did I," Eleanor said. Her voice was calm, but it changed the temperature of the room. She looked at Lily, not with pity, but with attention. "What color was the bag, child?" Crowley's smile flickered. "Mrs. Whitmore, I'm not sure that's necessary. I asked her." Lily blinked, surprised to be spoken to like her answer mattered. "Green," she said. It was a green paper bag. It made crinkly sounds. And the door had a little bell, but not like a school bell. A tiny one. Ethan's eyes lowered for a second. He could hear it too, that brass bell at Bell's Pharmacy, bright and old-fashioned, ringing above his wet shoulders while he counted out damp bills from his wallet. Crowley recovered quickly. There are several small businesses near campus. A child could remember a bag from anywhere. "True," Eleanor said, "which is why we check." She turned to the young assistant who had appeared behind her with a tablet pressed to her chest. "Call Bell's Pharmacy on Alder Street. Ask whether they can confirm a cash purchase 3 days ago, late afternoon. Aspirin, bottled water, possibly soup. Crowley's pen stopped clicking. Only then did Ethan look at her fully. Not because he wanted to win, because the order of her fear had changed. She was no longer afraid Lily's letter was false. She was afraid it was specific. A pharmacy receipt doesn't establish school merit, Crowley said. The sentence sounded reasonable on its surface. It also sounded rehearsed too late. Eleanor looked at her.
No.
But it may establish whether a child is being accused of inventing what she witnessed. Crowley's hand moved to the blue folder again. We should keep the focus on academic standards. Ethan's gaze dropped to the folder. The original letter was still missing from the official packet. The torn finalist sticker still clung to Lily's envelope. And now Crowley had named the issue as standards, not truth. He placed one hand gently over Lily's trembling fingers, steadying the paper without taking it from her. If the letter didn't matter, he said, why did someone peel her number off? No one answered. In the hallway, the assistant spoke quietly into her phone, one hand cupped around the speaker. Eleanor watched Crowley's face while the call connected. Lily watched the broken pencil roll a quarter-inch across the table and stop against the edge of the blue folder. Then the assistant looked up, eyes sharpened by something newly solid. Bells has a cash receipt from that afternoon, she said. $8.47. They can verify the items, but they need the original receipt number. Ethan went still. Not dramatically, not like a man receiving a miracle, like a man remembering where he had put a small piece of paper because poverty trained memory better than pride. His eyes moved, almost unwillingly, toward the parking lot beyond the window, where his old Ford sat under the gray sky with a damp receipt tucked above the sun visor. Ethan's eyes stayed on the parking lot for only a second, but Crowley saw it. Mr. Miller, she said almost gently, before we turn this into a scavenger hunt, perhaps we should remember that a receipt for aspirin does not determine whether a child is prepared for Whitmore. The sentence was polished. It had no sharp corners. But Lily flinched anyway, because children could hear what adults hid beneath soft voices. Ethan looked down at her, then at the envelope under her small hands. I'll get the receipt, he said. No, Crowley replied too quickly. We can verify it later through proper channels. Eleanor Whitmore's fingers rested on the edge of Lily's letter. She did not lift it. She did not claim it. She simply kept it from disappearing beneath the blue folder again. Let him retrieve it, she said. The room changed in small ways. The father in the navy overcoat stopped pretending to look at his phone. The woman by the pastries set her porcelain cup down without drinking. Somewhere beyond the wall, the string quartet began a brighter piece for the ceremony. But in this room the notes sounded too cheerful, almost indecent. Ethan bent toward Lily. Stay right here. I'll be back in 2 minutes. Lily's eyes widened. Daddy. He heard the fear under the word. Not fear of being alone exactly. Fear that once he stepped out, the adults would move the story without her. He took the broken pencil from the table and placed it back in her palm. Hold this, he said. It's just paper and truth. They don't get heavier because I walk outside. He left his brown jacket over her shoulders and stepped into the hallway. His boots made a dull sound on the marble, quieter than Crowley's heels but somehow more honest. Through the glass, he saw Eleanor lean closer to Lily, not smiling falsely, not cooing over her, just lowering herself into the chair opposite so the child would not have to look up to answer. Lily, Crowley said, returning to control as soon as Ethan was gone. While your father retrieves whatever he believes is relevant, perhaps you can read a small section of the letter for us. It may help us understand voice authenticity. Lily's throat moved. Do I have to? It's not a punishment, sweetheart. The word sweetheart had begun to sound like a curtain being drawn. Eleanor's eyes shifted to Crowley. Only if she chooses. Crowley gave the founder a careful smile. Of course, we never pressure children here. Lily looked at the page. Her thumb rubbed the corner where the B-17 sticker had been peeled. The room waited, and waiting became its own kind of pressure. She read in a voice so small the air vent nearly swallowed it. My dad says a person can be poor in money and still rich in what they refuse to take. A soft breath came from the sideboard, the kind people made when they did not know whether to be moved or embarrassed. Lily kept going. On Tuesday, he stopped in the rain for a lady whose car was broken. He gave her his handkerchief and bought her blue medicine in a green bag, even though we were going to have soup that night. Her voice cracked on soup. Crowley closed her eyes for half a second, as if enduring something unfortunate. You see, she said softly, this is precisely the concern. It places adult hardship on a child's shoulders. Eleanor did not respond. She was looking at Lily's hands. The child was not performing. She was surviving the telling. Out in the parking lot, Ethan opened the truck door and the smell of cold vinyl, oil, and old coffee rose to meet him. He reached above the driver's seat and felt along the sun visor. For one terrible second, there was nothing. Then his fingers brushed paper, damp stiff at one corner. He pulled it free, unfolded it against the steering wheel, and saw the faded black print. Bell's Pharmacy, Alder Street, for 38 p.m. Aspirin, bottled water, soup cup, cash, $8.47. A small, ordinary receipt. The kind of thing most people threw away without thinking. Ethan stared at it, not with triumph, but with a tired gratitude that made his shoulders lower. Then he noticed something else tucked behind it, pressed against the visor by accident. The duplicate service slip from his notebook, the carbon copy he sometimes tore loose for customers who needed proof of work. EW sedan, battery cable, no charge. He had not meant to bring it into a school argument. It was only how he kept track when parts and hours blurred together. But now the initials looked back at him like a door not yet opened. When he returned, Crowley was standing, one hand resting near the blue folder. Lily had stopped reading. Her face was red, but she was no longer bent over the table. Eleanor had placed a glass of water near her, untouched, with a napkin folded beneath it so it would not leave a ring on the polished wood. Ethan entered quietly and laid the receipt on the table, not in front of Crowley, not as a weapon, but in the open space where everyone could see it. That's it, he said. Crowley leaned forward. May I? Ethan nodded. She picked it up by the edges and studied it, searching for a flaw that would return the room to her. It confirms a purchase, she said. Nothing more. Eleanor's assistant, still by the door with the tablet, checked her notes. Bell's Pharmacy confirms the receipt number, time, and items. They also confirmed their prescription bags are green paper, and the entrance has a brass bell. The father in the navy overcoat lowered his gaze. The woman near the pastries stopped stirring coffee she had not sweetened. The room went, briefly, heavily quiet. Not the final silence. Not yet, but the first one. The kind that arrived when doubt lost one of its legs. Crowley set the receipt down with exact care. Again, Mrs. Whitmore, a verified errand does not establish that Lily is the appropriate student speaker for Founders Day. No, Eleanor said, but it establishes that she was telling the truth about what she saw. Children can tell the truth and still misunderstand what matters. Ethan looked at Crowley then. She didn't misunderstand being laughed at in October. The words were not loud, but they struck something. Lily's hand found the sleeve of his jacket around her shoulders. Crowley's expression softened into concern again. That incident was handled internally. By calling it withdrawal? Ethan asked. By turning her silence into a flaw? Crowley opened her mouth, but no answer came quickly enough. Eleanor picked up the receipt and placed it beside Lily's original letter. Then her eyes fell to the carbon copy beneath Ethan's hand. What is that? Ethan glanced down. Service note. I keep them for small jobs. May I see it? He hesitated, not because he had anything to hide, but because giving away a quiet act felt like making it smaller. Still, he slid it forward. Eleanor read the line once. EW sedan, battery cable, no charge. Her face did not reveal recognition, but her hand went still. Crowley noticed. Initials are hardly identification, she said. Many people have initials. Yes, Eleanor replied. That is why we do not stop at initials. She turned to her assistant. Pull the Founders Day program history. I want to know when finalist B17 was removed, who authorized it, and whether that happened before or after Lily Miller's name was attached to the blind submission. Crowley's smile remained, but the color beneath it changed. For the first time, the question in the room was no longer whether Ethan Miller's daughter had told the truth. It was who had been frightened enough to erase it. The question landed on the table harder than the receipt had. Who had been frightened enough to erase it? Eleanor Whitmore's assistant did not answer at once. She tapped her tablet, then looked toward the hallway as if the school itself might object to being searched. On the other side of the glass, the Founders Day music swelled, polished and expensive, violins moving neatly through a song about tradition while, inside the reception room, tradition began to look like a locked drawer. Mrs. Whitmore, Crowley said, smoothing one hand over her cream blazer. Program histories are administrative drafts. They change constantly. Then one more change should not be difficult to explain, Eleanor replied. Ethan stood behind Lily's chair, one hand resting lightly on the top rail, not touching his daughter's shoulders now because she was trying so hard to sit upright by herself. The Bell's Pharmacy receipt lay beside the letter. The service slip lay beside the receipt. EW sedan, battery cable, no charge. 3 small things, all too ordinary to impress a donor crowd, and yet the room had begun to arrange itself around them as if they were heavier than the furniture. The assistant's tablet gave a soft chime. She swallowed. I have the version history. Crowley's smile did not vanish. It only became thinner. I'm sure we can review that privately after the ceremony. Read it, Eleanor said. The assistant glanced at Ethan, then at Lily, then lowered her eyes to the screen. Blind submission B17 was selected by the faculty reading panel last Friday at 3:12 p.m. Notes say, most authentic reflection of belonging, recommended for live reading. Lily's lips parted slightly. Ethan felt it before he saw it, the tiny lift in his daughter's chest, as if some part of her had been underwater and had found air. Crowley's pen clicked once. The assistant continued. The student identity was attached Saturday morning at 8:04. Lily Miller, grade 5, scholarship applicant. Parent listed as Ethan Miller. Occupation field, mechanic and delivery driver. The room became very quiet. One of the parents shifted his weight and the leather of his shoe squeaked against the floor. And when was it removed? Eleanor asked. Saturday night, the assistant said. 9:47 p.m. By whom? Crowley looked toward the closed door. Not long, less than a second. But Ethan saw it. So did Eleanor. The assistant's voice dropped. Administrative override. Dr. Vanessa Crowley. Crowley lifted her chin. As head of school, I have authority over ceremony tone and institutional messaging. That is neither unusual nor improper. What replaced it? Eleanor asked. The assistant scrolled. An essay from submission A04. Student, Preston Hale. The woman near the pastries drew a sharp breath before she could stop herself.
Preston Hale.
The donor family name had brass plaques in the science wing. Ethan did not know the Hales, but he knew the way the room reacted to names that could write checks. Crowley turned slightly toward Eleanor, lowering her voice as if dignity required secrecy. Founders Day has always required balance. We cannot place every hardship narrative on stage simply because it is emotional. Hardship narrative, Ethan repeated. He did not say it like an accusation. He said it like a man tasting a phrase and finding metal in it. Lily looked at the table. Her little pencil rolled near the edge, and Ethan caught it before it fell. That small movement pulled the assistant's eyes to his hand, and perhaps because he had just saved something from being dropped, she found the courage to say the next part. There is an email attached to the change request. Crowley's head turned. Mara. The assistant froze. It was the first time anyone had used her name in the room, and somehow it sounded less like recognition than warning. Ethan looked at the young woman. She could not have been more than 25. Her thumb hovered over the tablet. Crowley's face softened instantly, correcting itself into concern. Mara, this is not your burden. Forward it to my office, and I'll contextualize it for Mrs. Whitmore. Ethan could have let the fear settle on the assistant. It would have been easy. The room wanted someone smaller to carry the weight. Instead he spoke quietly. Don't put this on her. Crowley's eyes flicked to him. Excuse me? Mistakes don't write emails. No one moved. The air conditioner hummed above them, steady and cold. Eleanor turned to Mara. Read the email. Mara's finger tapped the screen. Her voice shook at first, then steadied because the words were not hers. To Advancement Office. Subject: Founders Day Narrative Review. Avoid garage family narratives in live segments. Donor families expect aspiration, not hardship. B17 may be retained in archive but should not be read publicly. Lily stared at her father's boots. Ethan felt something hot and old move behind his ribs, the kind of anger that wanted to stand up and throw every polished sentence back in the room's face. But Lily was watching. He could feel her watching even when her eyes were down. So he stayed still. He chose the harder thing. Not revenge. Record. Truth. A clean road all the way to the end. Eleanor reached for the edge of the table, not because she was weak, but because something she had built had just spoken in a voice she did not recognize. Archive, she said softly. Children's hearts are not storage. Crowley breathed in through her nose. That phrase was unfortunate. It was about public-facing messaging. There it is again, Eleanor said. Public-facing. The assistant's tablet chimed a second time. There's more, Mara said, almost whispering. The same tag appears on other scholarship files. Crowley turned sharply. That is outside the scope of this discussion. But the words came too fast. Ethan looked at Eleanor and saw the change in her face. This was no longer only Lily. Mara scrolled with trembling fingers. 9 files over 3 years were marked culture fit concern after donor review. 4 had original student letters removed from the ceremony archive. 2 were redirected to waitlist despite faculty recommendation. The pastries sat untouched. Coffee cooled in porcelain cups. Somewhere outside, applause rose from the auditorium, bright and distant, as if another school existed beyond this room, one that still believed the banners hanging in its lobby. Eleanor slowly removed her glasses and set them beside Lily's letter. Without the glasses, her eyes looked older, yes, but not softer. Pull the founding charter, she said. Crowley stiffened. Mrs. Whitmore, with respect, the charter is symbolic.
No, Eleanor replied.
It is instructional. Mara hurried to the corner cabinet, opened a lower drawer with a brass key from her lanyard, and returned with a cream-colored folder edged in blue. On its front was the old Whitmore seal worn from handling. Eleanor opened it carefully. The paper inside had yellowed at the edges, but the ink remained dark. She read only one line aloud, and the room seemed to lean toward it. Whitmore exists for the child who would be overlooked elsewhere. Lily looked up then. Not fully. Just enough for that sentence to reach her. Ethan saw her hear it, saw the way her fingers relaxed around the broken pencil. Eleanor turned the charter so it faced Crowley, then placed the email beside it. Avoid garage family narratives. The 2 sentences sat together like witnesses who did not need a lawyer. Crowley's jaw worked once. You are creating a public scandal from an internal correction. No, Eleanor said. You created the correction. The public will hear why. Crowley glanced toward the auditorium doors, where her scheduled speech waited, where donors sat under soft lights, where Preston Hale's replacement essay was likely already printed in the program. For the first time that morning, her mask did not break, but it showed its seam. She reached for her phone. Eleanor's hand covered it before Crowley could lift it. Not harshly, just finally. No more private fixing. Ethan looked at the service slip, the receipt, the peeled B17 sticker, the email, and the old charter aligned on the table. He understood then that the truth had grown too large for a reception room, too heavy for whispered apologies, too dangerous to leave behind a closed door. Outside, the auditorium announcer called Dr. Vanessa Crowley's name to the stage. The auditorium doors opened on a room that had already decided what kind of story it wanted to hear. Warm lights glowed over rows of navy chairs. A brass school crest shone above the stage. Parents sat shoulder to shoulder in wool coats and silk scarves, program cards resting on their laps, while students whispered beneath banners that read belonging, excellence, tradition. At the far end of the stage, beneath a portrait of Eleanor Whitmore as a younger woman, Dr. Vanessa Crowley stood waiting beside the podium, composed. Again, cream blazer smooth, expression calm, as if no letter had been hidden and no child had just been told she did not fit. Ethan Miller entered from the side aisle with Lily beside him. He did not walk like a man about to win. He walked like a father who had been awake too many nights and had still chosen to keep his back straight. Lily held the white envelope with both hands. The half-peeled B-17 sticker caught the stage light as they moved toward the last row, and a few parents turned to look. One whispered. Another lowered her eyes to Ethan's boots. Lily felt it and drifted closer to his side. "Can we go home?" she asked, barely moving her lips. Ethan looked at the stage, then at the folder in Eleanor's hands as she stepped quietly through the opposite aisle with Mara behind her. "After they tell the truth about your letter," he said. The words were low, not meant for the room, but they steadied Lily more than a shout ever could have. Up front, Crowley touched the microphone. It gave a soft pop and the auditorium settled. "Good morning, Whitmore families, faculty, trustees, and honored guests," she began, every syllable polished. "Founders' Day is not merely a ceremony. It is a reflection of the values we protect for our children." Ethan heard the word protect and felt Lily's hand tighten around his sleeve. Crowley continued, "Sometimes leadership requires difficult decisions that may be misunderstood by those outside the full context. Today's program has been carefully adjusted to preserve the dignity of all students involved." There it was, the first turn. Not denial, not confession. A blanket of language laid over a wound. Several parents nodded, grateful for a sentence that let them stop feeling uncomfortable. Crowley's eyes swept toward the back row only once. "We ask our community to trust the process and avoid reducing complex educational judgments to emotional fragments." For a moment, it almost worked. The room wanted her to be right. The room wanted the ceremony to continue, the music to play, the scholarship names to be read without asking whose voice had been removed to make the program smoother. Eleanor did not interrupt. She stood near the side steps, holding the thin file against her gray sweater, watching Crowley perform the school's favorite illusion, kindness without accountability. Crowley lifted a printed program. Our first student reflection today will be read by Preston Hale, whose essay beautifully captures the aspirational spirit of Whitmore. A ripple of approval moved through the front rows. Somewhere near the center, a man in a dark suit sat taller, proud already. Ethan did not know him, but the name Hale had already made the reception room colder. Lily looked down at her envelope. The B-17 sticker, damaged and stubborn, remained. Eleanor finally stepped forward. Not quickly, not dramatically. The sound of her shoes on the stage steps was soft, but the room heard it because authority did not always need volume. Crowley turned, smile intact. "Mrs. Whitmore, what a lovely surprise. We were just about to begin." Eleanor looked out at the room before she looked at Crowley. "Then let us begin correctly." The microphone carried it clearly. A small murmur passed through the audience. Crowley's hand stayed on the podium. "Of course, if you would like to offer remarks after the student readings, we would be honored." "Before the readings," Eleanor said. Crowley's smile held, but it tightened along one side. "We do have a scheduled order." "I know." Eleanor lifted the folder. "I have the earlier one." That was the second turn. A few trustees in the first row exchanged glances. Mara stood at the foot of the stage with her tablet pressed to her chest, pale but still there. Crowley lowered her voice, but the microphone betrayed her. "This is not the appropriate venue for an administrative discrepancy." Ethan heard the word discrepancy and almost laughed, not because anything was funny, but because some people could shrink a child's humiliation until it sounded like a typo. Eleanor turned slightly toward the audience. "Dr. Crowley, why was the Founders' Day finalist letter marked B17 removed after the student's family name was attached to the blind submission. The murmur sharpened. Lily's fingers froze on the envelope. Crowley inhaled, then gave the room a practiced look of regret. Because Whitmore must consider not only authenticity, but readiness. The letter in question, while heartfelt, placed undue emotional weight on adult hardship. We determined another essay would better serve the student body. For a few seconds, she seemed to recover the room again. It sounded reasonable. It sounded protective. It sounded like something a good principal might say. Then Ethan stood. Not all the way into the aisle, not to seize the stage, just enough that his voice could travel without aggression. My daughter's letter was chosen before they knew she was mine. The room changed. Not loudly. Programs stopped rustling. A chair leg stopped scraping. The air conditioning became suddenly audible above them. Crowley looked toward him. Mr. Miller, please don't put Lily in the center of an adult misunderstanding. Ethan rested one hand on Lily's shoulder. I'm trying to take her out of one. Eleanor looked at Lily. May I hold your letter? The whole auditorium seemed to watch the child decide. Ethan knelt beside her, making himself smaller than her fear. Only if you want to, he said. Lily looked at the envelope as if it were heavier than paper, then rose and walked 3 steps to the aisle. She did not march. She did not make a speech. She simply handed it to Mara, who carried it to Eleanor with both hands. The B17 sticker flashed under the lights. Eleanor placed it on the podium. Beside it, one by one, she laid down the Bell's Pharmacy receipt, the carbon service slip marked EW Sedan, battery cable, no charge, and a printed page from the program history showing B17 selected at 3:12 p.m. and removed at 9:47 p.m. The audience leaned forward despite itself. Crowley said, "Those items do not prove misconduct. They only prove that a moving private story has been mischaracterized as institutional truth." Discomfort is not danger, Eleanor said. Sometimes it is conscience waking up. Then she turned to Mara. The email. Crowley's face flickered. Not enough for the donors to understand. Enough for Ethan to see. Mara stepped to the screen control at the side of the stage. A projector hummed awake, throwing blue-white light across the curtain. For one breath, nothing appeared but the Whitmore crest. Crowley lifted a hand. Mrs. Whitmore, I strongly advise that we not display internal correspondence involving minors. It was her last good defense, and it sounded noble. A few parents nodded again, relieved to have privacy offered as a shield. Eleanor did not dismiss it. She honored the concern by keeping her voice even. No child will be exposed. Only the adult words used to erase one. The screen changed. Subject: Founders Day Narrative Review. Avoid garage family narratives. Donor families expect aspiration, not hardship. The auditorium went quiet, but not silent yet. That silence was still waiting for its key. Crowley gripped the podium. Context matters, she said. Eleanor looked down at Lily's envelope, then reached into the pocket of her gray coat. Ethan saw the movement before anyone else did. His breath stopped. Slowly, Eleanor drew out a folded navy handkerchief, worn soft at the corners, and placed it beside the letter marked B17. The founder looked at the room, then at the child in the last row, then at the man in the brown canvas jacket who had never sent a bill, and opened Lily's letter to the first line. Eleanor Whitmore opened Lily's letter under the white auditorium lights, with the navy handkerchief resting beside it like a witness that had waited 3 days to speak. The projector still held Crowley's email on the screen behind her. Avoid garage family narratives. Donor families expect aspiration, not hardship. The words floated above the stage in cold blue light while the founder of the school looked down at the child whose voice had nearly been erased. My name is Lily Miller, Eleanor read, and the microphone caught the faint rasp of paper against her hand. I am 10 years old, and sometimes I get quiet when people look at me like I walked through the wrong door. A sound moved through the auditorium. Not quite a gasp. Not quite shame. Ethan stood in the back row with his hand around Lily's, and he felt her fingers curl tighter. He did not squeeze first. He let her choose the strength she needed. Eleanor continued, "My dad says doors are funny things. Some open because you have the right key. Some open because someone on the other side remembers they were built to let people in." Crowley's hand tightened on the edge of the podium. Her pen, the same silver pen she had used in the reception room, slipped from her fingers and clicked once against the wood. No one bent to pick it up. The sound was too small and somehow everyone heard it. Eleanor read on, slower now. "On Tuesday it rained so hard the road looked like a river. Daddy was late picking me up, but he stopped for an old lady whose car was broken near the bus stop. He gave her his blue handkerchief because she was shaking. He bought her medicine in a green paper bag, even though we were supposed to buy soup." Lily looked at the floor. A few rows ahead, a mother who had been whispering earlier lowered her program into her lap. The brass school crest above the stage caught the light and shone like something suddenly too clean for the room beneath it. Eleanor placed one finger on the next line, but before reading, she lifted the handkerchief. "This handkerchief," she said, "was given to me by Ethan Miller 3 days ago." The auditorium froze. Not because she had shouted, because she had not. Ethan's breath stopped halfway in his chest. Lily looked up at him, confused first, then startled by the look on his face. He had not known. He had truly not known. Eleanor turned slightly toward the audience. "My sedan stalled near the rear bus stop. I was cold, wet, and embarrassed. Mr. Miller stopped. He repaired a loose battery cable. He gave me heat from his truck. He bought aspirin and water from Bell's Pharmacy. Then he refused payment." Mara stepped forward and placed the Bell's Pharmacy receipt under the document camera. The image appeared on the screen beside Crowley's email. "Bell's Pharmacy, Alder Street, 4:38 p.m. Aspirin, bottled water, soup cup, cash, $8.47. Next came the service slip, enlarged until every person could read the line written in Ethan's plain hand. "EW sedan, battery cable, no charge." The room did not breathe normally anymore. It breathed in pieces. Eleanor nodded to Mara again. The screen shifted to the program history. Blind submission B17 selected by faculty panel. Most authentic reflection of belonging. Recommended for live reading. Then the next entry. Identity attached. Lily Miller. Parent occupation. Mechanic and delivery driver. Then the final entry. Removed. Administrative override. Dr. Vanessa Crowley. A trustee in the front row slowly turned toward Crowley. Another removed his glasses. The father in the dark suit, the Hale donor, looked down at his printed program as if it had grown unfamiliar in his hands. Crowley's mouth opened, but only a dry breath came out. "Context," she said finally, voice thinner than before. "Context matters." Eleanor looked at her for a long moment. Then she reached into the folder and withdrew the old founding charter. The cream paper edged in blue, worn at the folds from decades of being handled by people who once believed it. She placed it beneath the document camera. The line appeared on the screen, larger than the email, larger than the receipt, larger than any donor name printed in the program. "Whitmore exists for the child who would be overlooked elsewhere." Eleanor's voice lowered. "This is the context." Silence fell, full and complete. The quartet outside the side doors had stopped playing. The air conditioning hummed above the ceiling panels. Somewhere in the back, a phone vibrated against a wooden chair, and no one reached for it. Lily's envelope made a faint sound as her hand trembled. Ethan moved his thumb gently over her knuckles, not to quiet her, but to remind her she was not alone in the shaking. Eleanor faced the auditorium. "Ethan Miller did not know my name, my office, or my power. He did not know I founded this school. He did not know that the woman in the rain had the authority to stand here today." She looked toward Ethan, and there was no pity in her expression, only respect. "That is why his kindness tells the truth." Crowley stepped away from the podium half an inch. It was the first retreat her body had allowed. "Mrs. Whitmore," she said, barely above the microphone's breath, "I was trying to protect the school's image." Eleanor did not look away. "You protected an image by injuring a child." The sentence landed without decoration. No one clapped. No one cheered. The silence had become too honest for noise. Eleanor turned to the trustees. The removal of Lily Miller's letter from today's program is hereby void. Her scholarship status is restored pending no further review from the head of school's office. Effective immediately, Dr. Crowley's authority over scholarship recommendations is suspended until the board completes an independent audit of this process. Crowley's face did not collapse. It emptied. Her eyes moved toward the camera at the back of the room, then away from it, as if even the lens had stopped belonging to her. Eleanor picked up Lily's letter again. And this child's letter will be read in full, not because she is poor, not because hardship is decorative, and not because we owe anyone a performance of compassion. It will be read because it was chosen when no one knew her name. She looked at Lily. Only if she permits it. Every eye turned to the last row, but this time the attention did not feel like a spotlight. It felt like a door opening from the inside. Lily leaned into Ethan's side and whispered, "Daddy, you helped her?" Ethan looked at the handkerchief on the stage, then at the woman he had warmed in his truck, then down at his daughter. "She was cold," he said softly. That was enough. The words traveled no farther than the nearest row, but somehow they seemed to finish what the evidence had begun. Eleanor heard them. Her eyes shone, but her voice remained steady. "Yes," she said into the microphone. That was enough. The auditorium stayed silent for several more seconds, as if every person there was being asked to remember a door they had closed too quickly. Justice had begun, not with applause, but with records, signatures, receipts, and one child's returned voice. And as the founder stepped down from the podium holding Lily's letter, Ethan Miller stood in the back of the room facing the first real recognition of his life, with no desire to use it except to protect the little girl holding his hand.